been following him for a while, and I saw all the things he's doing, and I'm really impressed with how he conducts himself as a leader, how he conducts himself as a business strategist, and the value he's adding to people. So I don't know what his story is. I'm putting it out there, but he told me he has a pretty resilient story. And with that, I want to welcome Gary. Welcome to the Sally Allen podcast.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. And I understand this is not your normal day for this, and you made this happen for me. So that's very, very kind of you.
Yes, I did. I find that I have my mojo on Fridays,
Yeah.
and I have happy juice, so hopefully that would help.
Happy Wednesday, Juice.
Happy Wednesday juice, and hopefully that would help me get through today. But welcome to the Sally Allen podcast. I am so glad you're here. You flew in on Sunday,
Yeah.
so no jet lag. You're ready to rock and
Ready
roll.
to rock and roll.
All right, good. So what is a life strategist? I know business. I get that.
Yeah, well, basically, we need strategies to go from point A to point B. I was just telling somebody yesterday how, as a pilot, which is what I use my pilot skills, if you will, to fly out here, we have certain procedures when things go wrong. We have strategies. So if we have this light go on, we go in memory, do this, this, and this. Then we go to the checklist. And if this light goes on, by memory, we do this, this, and this. That's a strategy. But what about strategies for your emotional health? So what happens when something hits the fan that you don't expect to happen? Because your airplane, when you're flying, doesn't say, hey, I just want to let you know in 20 minutes, we're going to have a light go out on you and you just need to be prepared for it. Life doesn't happen that way. You don't have a moment where you're driving in the car and somebody says, hey, in 10 minutes, you're going to have a car accident. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So when things happen in your business with your kids, your family, and they're emotionally impactful, what is your memory items? What's the things that you do here, here, and here to create the move, if you will, to get beyond that? So that's what I share. I share specific practical strategies. And in business, I do the same thing.
I love that. And I love what you said about what is your memory item because that is the key. You
100%.
have to retrain your brain
Constantly.
from what you have learned. It's almost like you're unlearning,
Yes.
creating
To
new
learn.
neural path and creating that
100%.
so you can draw from it.
Yes. And the reason and how I became so acutely aware of doing this, back to my story, as an entrepreneur is really successful. I started my first business at 11, my second business at 15. Shortly after that, I made $100,000 a year. Wife and I got married. We have a baby. Then later on, she tells me it's not mine.
Wait, back 11.
11.
What did you do at 11?
I it was in the jewelry business, little beaded keychains and things like
Oh
that.
my God.
Then being from the islands,
Yes.
I started doing black coral. It's a rare coral at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
then I started getting into fine jewelry and repairing jewelry, and did real well with that. And then that's when things changed. Like I said, I got married. My wife and I, we had a baby. She tells me it wasn't mine. My
Oh
grandfather and
my God.
stepfather died of cancer. My uncle was killed in a plane crash. I got a phone call from my mother to let me know my father had just been shot point blank in his chest. And all this by the time I was 21 years old. And then it gets worse.
Oh my God.
That's all cakewalk. I was born and raised in a cult, and I left that about 15 years ago. And when you're in this cult, when you leave, all the so called friends and family in the cult are programmed to shun you for the rest of your life and have nothing to do with you. So that put me in an emotional and financial tailspin of $350,000 in debt. And so, yeah, that's part of my crazy
Oh my
story.
God.
So I have
Wow.
strategies to help people.
Wow. So was the cult in the islands?
They're all over the world.
They're all over the world.
Yeah.
So how did you? So they shun you. They don't come after you.
Um, Typically, you'd say no, they don't come after you overall, but they definitely do shun you. Yeah.
All right. So all this happened by the age of 21. Put you in an emotional tailspin. How did you get out of that?
Well, we have to learn how to be very resilient. And I was very fortunate that before all this, I had a level of success in my business, even as a teenager. So I knew if I did it once, I could do it again. But what was the difference between the second try and the first try? The difference was in between was the emotional hard drive was filled up with a lot of trauma.
Mm,
So at least I had something to look back on. Hey, I did it once. And I just didn't want to be defeated. I had too much pride to go bankrupt. So I went ahead and came up with strategies to get that $350,000 out of debt. And then I started becoming acutely aware of, and obsessed more so with how can something be done. If something normally takes an hour, why can't it be done in 50 minutes with the same quality? Why can't it be done in 40 minutes? Then I become really obsessed with helping people as fast as possible. So I got the attention of Dr. Phil on his show, The Doctors, and I did 3 years on that show. And what they would do, they would bring people to me that have been through major trauma.
Wait, back up. You were on the Dr. Phil show.
His show, The Doctors. Yeah, I did that for 3 years.
Doctors.
Yeah,
For 3 years.
for 3 years. Yeah, yeah,
Oh my
in
God,
LA.
this is incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure the audience is hearing
Right, right.
Yeah.
So what they would do, they would bring me, I specialize, and I don't say this with ego or arrogance, but I do in an hour what therapists or business consultants don't do in a year, and I prove it. So they would bring me the worst case scenarios of people with major trauma, people who have been in therapy 10, 20, 30 years, and in one session, I would rewire their whole thought process without hypnosis. But it gives people the opportunity to see what is capable. I mean, let me give you an example. If you know of anybody or you've experienced any type of major fear before, or anxiety or stress, when that happens, what happens to you? Your heart rate increases. It can literally double. Your palms begin to sweat. Your body's temperature changes. Imagine now if the body can do all this through the mind in a negative manner, what we could do if we knew how to switch it in a positive manner. Amazing. Like, for example, I use these tools on my own. I wake up this morning, I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning. When I'm in Florida, I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I go tremendously. I do this through my diet, and I do this through my mind. So there's a lot of things that we can do to rewire ourselves, and when we have the strategies, it's a game changer.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. So
Let's start unpacking.
Let's unpack it, because I know exactly what you're talking about. If you're going out on stage to speak and you're feeling nervous, you could also equate that to feeling excited. It's the same symptoms that you would experience, which is the sweating, the heart's pounding when you're excited or when you're nervous. So what you're saying is you're able to switch that.
Well, what I'm saying is you're doing that unconsciously.
It's happening.
Yes. What I'm saying is to learn to have the ability to control the mind where you can reverse anything negative in the positive. So if our mind has the ability to make our palms sweat without understanding how to do it consciously, what could we do consciously if we really knew how to harness our thought process? It's crazy powerful.
It's crazy. Because the brain, what I've learned is the brain doesn't know the difference if it's happening or if it's not. If you're thinking something, you're going to jump off a cliff, you could have that same effect as if you're standing in front of that.
Right.
So what's your methodology? What do you use?
Well, what you're saying there is very powerful if it's used correctly. So the nervous system cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality.
Right.
So then when I'm working with a person, so here's what happens. When a person does not understand how to manipulate or control their own nervous system, whatever their situation is, they make it worse than it really is. For example, let's say you had a phobia of a snake. Every time you think of a snake, what does your nervous system do? It builds on that negativity more and more. And every time you think about it, even though maybe you haven't touched one in 20 years, all you're doing is emotionally digging your grave deeper and deeper. Right. So if you don't know how to change that, and it's not changed, then the nervous system continues to work against you, not for you, because you don't know how to harness it.
Yeah. So what do you use? I know thought replacement is one of the processes. What else do you use to help people to harness that?
So I'm the rebel in a lot of this in this industry. Okay. All right. So you'll hear people say, change your thoughts, or change your story, change your life. Right. Well, that's not true. Let me tell you why that's not true. If I keep saying to you, I can't, and then you say to me, but Gary, say you can, and I keep saying I can, if I keep saying I can, but I still believe I can't, then I can't. So then what I need to do is I not only need to change my story, I next need to believe my story, then that changes my life. So the focus is not changing the story. That's just the beginning. That's the elementary part. The second part is, let's figure out what the story is. That's the first part. Let's figure out what's the new story. So we go from I can't to I can. That's the new story. Yeah. Now, what specifically do I need to do to believe the I can? That's what you focus on now. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe that you can when you first believe that you can't? Well, it's going to be a 0 if 10 is the highest. Right. So the goal is then, what psychology or what strategies or what moves or things that we can do to go from 0 to a 1, to a 5, and so on and so on. Once it gets to a 10, the belief has changed. And that's why, people don't understand how to use affirmations. The more you say a positive affirmation, the less you believe it. That's why you keep saying it.
Wow, that's interesting.
Think about that. Anytime you have to say something over and over, like, when you woke up this morning, you didn't say, I'm a woman, I'm a woman, I'm a woman. I didn't wake up while I was shaving and say, I'm a man, I'm a man.
Right.
I know that. I believe it. There's no
Right.
need for me to keep saying it. Now, if I have to keep saying it, there's a problem. So
Right,
it means
right.
I don't believe it. So my goal now is not to just keep saying it. My goal is to say it less or not say it at all. But to get to that, I must believe it.
How do you get people to believe it?
That's the loaded question because everybody's different. So I can
Right.
get 10 people with the exact same problem, and I have to deal with each person differently with a different approach because I don't know what specifically their core belief system is. So if I gave you an answer, it's so generic that it can't be applicable to everybody.
What's an example? Give us an example that you've used.
That's a very good question. So an example, so one of the beliefs that I've created that I use is one of the important thing in understanding human behavior is that we are a slave to our feelings. You're programmed to be a slave to your feelings. So every time you experience an emotion, positive or negative, you're going to do one of two things. Number one, you're going to reward it, or number two, you're going to ignore it. So if you reward the negative emotion, then you continue to get the negative results. So then if we're a slave to our emotions and a slave to our feelings naturally as humans, then we need to come up with some way to circumnavigate that natural thing that we have to be a slave to our feelings. So I created a belief that I use every single day that keeps me moving one step in front of the other. And it's this: when my feelings are not in harmony with my goals, ignore my feelings.
I love it.
And the reason we have to learn to ignore our feelings, because again, we have the human tendency to be a what? A slave to our feelings. So then if you are consciously aware that your goal is to lead your feelings, not be a slave to them, you start taking different routes. And then you no longer start listening to the negative emotions. Now, when some people hear this, will say, you're telling people to put their feelings under the carpet. No, I'm not. There's some areas that you need to deal with your feelings. And I think a lot of times in therapy, the challenge with therapy is some therapists feel that you have to relive the whole situation. And a lot of times that's not necessary. For example, the reason people have emotional pain to certain things is because when they think about it, they associate negative emotions to it. So if you can switch that and create positive associations to it, the game changes. So when I work with a person, I'll do something on stage, like say I do a 1,000 people, I'll pick somebody in the audience who's deathly phobic, and I'll bring them up on stage, and I don't need to know their story, why they're phobic of something. I just know that they have a negative association to this, whatever this is. If I can create a different association, the game changes instantly.
Wow, that's interesting. But I agree with what you say, because every time we run with our feelings, we run into problems. And it's as simple as, I didn't feel like I wanted to work out today.
Right.
So what do?
You ignored the feeling.
I plant my feet on the floor,
Yep.
go change into my workout clothes, and went straight to the gym.
Right.
So you can't follow those feelings.
You cannot.
Obviously, you have to listen to your instincts, but you never really follow your feelings because they will guide you. Don't you hear this a lot? Well, I don't feel like I want to do that. I don't feel like doing this today. I don't feel like going to that event I made that commitment to. Plant your feet on the floor and go.
100%.
And you're saying that's what change beliefs is, that when you put action, ignore the feelings and put action.
That's ignoring the feelings, exactly.
Yes.
So now, what causes us to work harder to ignore our feelings? That's the other question. So you'll hear people say belief is everything. It's not true. Belief is not everything, because you can believe all day long and still not take action. So how is it then I can believe and not take action? You're missing another part. The other part you're missing, and there are only two things and two things only that cause us as humans to have the desire and motivation to succeed at anything. One is belief, and the other is value. Value is the level of importance we place on something. So then this is why we often know what we need to do, but we can't get ourselves to do it. It's because we might have a belief but no value, no level of importance. Or we might have a value level of importance. Oh, this is important to me, but we don't have the belief, or believe we can do it, or belief to want to do it. Without those two things, you cannot be consistent at anything.
I love that, because if just yesterday I was doing a presentation and I put my values in there, and I'm going to go back to the health one. like health is one of my top values. It's faith and then health. So that's what gets me out of bed when I feel that I
Right.
just want to
Don't
turn
want to do
over and
it.
go back to sleep.
Sure, sure.
It's tying to that core values.
Right.
And I think core values are so important, and people don't realize that.
It's
They're
huge.
like, I would ask my clients, so what is your values and what is your mission statement for life? Because
Right.
I feel everything is built off of that.
Yeah.
What we do. What do you gauge your life against?
Yeah. And most people don't really know what their values are.
No,
No, because I'll ask a person what their values are, and they'll say something like family, but that's really not their value.
no, no.
Always understand that a value really is a feeling.
Right.
So when somebody says, if I say to them, give me 3 things that are most important to you, they'll say, well, family or finance and health, but that's not true. There's something that the finances give you. There's something your family
That's
gives you.
right.
There's
That's
something
right.
working out gives you. That's what you're looking for. It's the feeling from those things. For example, somebody might say, money's important to me. Well, they think money's important to them, but what is it that money is giving them? So money might give you security.
That's
Money might give
right.
me power. It's all different. So
Yes.
the root of it is, what is it
It's
giving?
what
What's
is
the
it giving?
feeling it's giving you?
Exactly, exactly. And I like to tie it in like this. I would say, when I say faith, I explain. When I do something, I step out in faith. I don't have to see everything.
Good.
That's
Very
what I
good.
tell them,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And when I say family, does it take away from my family what I'm doing?
Right.
That's why it's important.
Sure.
And when I say health, I need to have my health to do those things.
Right.
And then whatever I'm doing, does it create impact down here to people? Because my mission statement is to help people reach their potential personally and professionally, and it all ties like that. And then they look at me and go, oh, so that's what
Right. That's what you mean.
that's what you mean.
Yes.
But when you put it like that, then they understand. Like, but if you don't have that foundation, when you're going for a new job, what do you measure it up against?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say, well, I have 2 job offers. Which job do I take? Well,
Right.
if you have your values, you can easily measure up. It's an easy solution
Yeah,
to
yeah.
know which one to take.
Very important.
Yeah, it's very, very
Yeah.
important. So great. I loved your strategies and your methodology that you're using. What do you do as a strategist for the business side? Like,
The business side is a little different, because in business, the problem with a lot of people in business, they don't realize how fast they can get from point A to point B. For example, let's say that you and I are going to have a race, and you have a helicopter, and we're going to go 5 miles, and I have a bicycle. It's pretty reasonable that you're going to win the race. So let's say we get to the 5 mile mark, and you get there first, and then we say, okay, let me have the helicopter. We're going to go 100 miles this time, but this time you're going to have the jet. Who's going to get there quicker? You're going to get there quicker. So ultimately, I help people try to figure out, number one, what is the strategy that you can use, that you can move quickly to work smarter, not harder. There's always a better strategy, always, always, always. And then what might be the limited beliefs that need to be installed and reinstalled with something new. And once you determine that, you can do way, 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 way faster in results. For example, another thing I tell people, that some of my clients, I encourage them, why would you not consider having your own TV show? Or why would you not consider something that big? Well, most people don't even think that big, and then there's other limited beliefs that prevent them. But my philosophy in business is it's smarter for you to do one presentation
right.
in front of 1 million people, like TV, which also goes on the internet, as opposed to one presentation in front of 500 people.
Right.
So then, if that's the case, well, where should we be focusing our attention? Focusing our attention to do one presentation in front of 1 million people. That's just one simple strategy. And when we're aware of the strategies, it changes the game. And I think a lot of times with people in business is they don't appreciate the importance of the proximity being power, and your network is truly your net worth. So the people I hang with, it's not uncommon for us to talk about, I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and that's they're doing 28 million a day. They're billionaires. That's $1 billion, right? And then I have other people that big money. So it's not uncommon. But if you hang around people where this stuff is like, oh my God, what? Then you're limiting yourself. So and one of the things that we have to do is we have to consciously change who our friends are, change who we hang around with. And when I was in the cult, in fact, I remember literally writing down on a piece of paper who I'm going to remove as my friends and who I'm going to keep as my friends. And this is very, very vital to your success, because keep in mind, who influences you the most? The person that influences you the most is you, because nobody's around you more than you.
That's right.
And depending on the recording that you put in your head, that whatever that is, it's going to go over and over and over and over. And if it's not interrupted, and needs to be interrupted, because we become very insular in our thinking, meaning it's from a Latin word meaning isle, or to isolate from an island. So when we're insular in our thinking, by not reaching out and exposing ourselves to programs like what you have, and things that I do, then we get stuck to where we're at. And that being stuck could be $1 million, right? So
Totally,
that's where it's
totally,
important
yeah.
to make that change and
Yeah,
shift.
in a nutshell, you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to
You're the
that.
sum of the 5 people you hang out with. But I love what you said. Your network is your net worth.
No question.
No question.
Yeah.
Because before we started, I was telling you about my coaching business.
Yes.
And it was because of my networking, and I've done so well. If I knew I was good at doing it, which I didn't know, it wasn't intentional at all.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just doing it because it's just who I am.
Yeah.
It's my personality. That's how you and I got to talk.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
So if I knew back then, I would have been more intentional in doing it. But I think I did pretty well in that space. But I think it's so important that we are intentional about who we hang out with and what we're pouring in here.
Yeah, and the thing is there's so much programming that we have to be really, really careful of.
Yeah.
And what happens is I look at the way we operate as a hard drive, like a computer. If you go on a computer and you want to download, a PDF or something like that, and you click it once, and if you get a little impatient like me, you double click it. You've literally just downloaded it 3 times. And in time, what's going to happen is your computer's hard drive is going to slow and be slower and slower. Right. No matter how fast you think you can type and how intentional you are, it's still going to slow down. And this is why, when we can have all the intention in the world to move forward to our goals and our dreams, there just seems to be sometimes why can't we just do it? And yes, it might be because of the limited belief or the limited value, but then there is something behind, inside that emotional hard drive. That's what needs to be clean to free us out. And if not, we're just going to feel like we're pushing a parked car. We'll be active, but active accomplishing nothing.
Right. So you're saying you got to work on yourself.
You have to, but and it's so important to know what is it specifically you need to work on. I know, because of being in the cult and losing all the friends and the tragedies I've had in my life, I know what the ripple effects of those are to this very day. Right. I also am very aware of them, to also know what I need to do to circumnavigate, deal with them, work with them. If not, it's going to bite you.
Right. And you have to recognize also what your triggers are and what's going to set you off.
Very true.
Working on that.
Right.
What you said before on going off, I don't believe also in digging into your past to help you in the future, because I've never gone to a therapist or done any of that. By the grace of God, I've done the work on myself, and some people might say that sounds arrogant, but it really isn't. I didn't have to dig in. I started studying and learning and growing at an early age, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I'm not going back there. I look at it. My past defines me, but I get to choose how.
Sure.
How it defines
Right,
me.
100%.
Yeah, and I love that saying. I don't like people say your past won't define you. It will. Somewhere or the other, you get to choose.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. A couple of words you said, I wrote down here. Your drive, pride, and belief. And I love what you said. You're driven. I wrote that down. You're very driven. But you had this pride, and it wasn't an arrogant pride in you, that you wanted to do better.
Well, the pride was I didn't want to go bankrupt. I was $350,000 in debt, and I wanted to succeed at recovering that.
Talk to our audience about that pride, which isn't arrogant, but it creates a drive and a belief in you to be the person you am today.
Yeah, I mean, I just did not want to say I went bankrupt, And it's not that I could not have done that, and I don't fault other people for doing that, because sometimes it's a business move. Sometimes it's literally the smart business move to make. But you've got to figure out what you can find out that's inside of you. We all have it inside of us, and we've got to figure out what is it that sparks us. And many people, look how many people that you are aware of, that that I know, that spent years and years and years going to college, and they're not even ending up doing what it is they went to college for, and they're like $100,000 in friggin' debt for it, you know? So we've got to figure out what it is that really brings us excitement in life. And many people go through life without tapping into what it is they really, really love to do because of all the psychological limitations that we have, the hows, the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the what ifs, the what ifs. So it does limit us. So I encourage people to make a quantum leap in their life. And a quantum leap is when you know that you need to make a change and you do it when you're not ready. So it's moving when you're not ready.
Yeah.
And that is very difficult to do because when you move when you're not ready, your brain is telling you, I'm not ready because I have fear, I have doubt, I have all these things. But when you create the pattern in your life that you make quantum leaps, ignoring your feelings, moving when you're not ready, the doors that open to you just become huge.
Yeah. And I think that's what creates power also because you're building new thought process that I am going to move regardless. That's
Yes,
what it is.
yes, yes.
Regardless. Because the truth is, Gary, we will never be ready to do hard things.
Yes, and if you wait forever,
If you
you'll
wait
be waiting
forever,
forever.
you will be waiting forever.
Yeah.
Because I've known people who spend 30 years at the same job. And sometimes this is generational, right?
Sure.
There's
Yeah.
tradition, there's generational.
That's all they know.
That's all they know and that's all they do.
Yeah.
And once I figure that out, I just can't wake up and just go to work and come back home and
Right.
do 9 to 5 anymore.
Yeah.
There's just so much more to life.
So much more.
So much more.
And the reason, this is why people stay in abusive relationships. This is why people stay in jobs they don't like. It's because you get caught up into that routine and you don't have a network that says you can do this, you can do this, and being in a network of all the other people that are doing it. And if you would at least, you know, excuse me, just open up your mind just a wee bit, just to get to those people and listen more, it does change the game. It doesn't make it easy necessarily, but it does change the game.
Having the support is important.
100%.
I remember when I had one person, I stayed in an abusive relationship all my life, and I had one person that believed in me. That's when I made that quantum leap.
Nice.
One person. So I want to talk about Gary now. What are some of the disciplines that you use to keep your mind resilient, like every day? What are some of the things you do?
I have some unusual ones. I wake up very early because I lost so much of my life in the cult. So I typically wake up at 4 o'clock every morning. Yep. I read 2 to 4 books a month. I tell people you don't have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's nonsense. But you have to put in the time. So whether you put in 12 hours from 4 o'clock in the morning to whenever, or you wake up at 9 o'clock and do it, you got to put in the time. It has nothing to do when you wake up. I also, before I start my mornings when I'm in my office, I type very fast. So I type 90 to 100 words a minute. So before I get started in my morning, I make sure I get my brain snapping and going till I type 90 words a minute before I start anything.
Do you type just anything?
No, I have a software that does that, you know, that measures how fast you're typing and the accuracy.
Yeah, but what do you type? Like,
oh, whatever it says me, it just brings it up. It just brings it up. Yeah. So that's my only ritual, if you will. That's pretty much it. I just want to get my brain snapping, and then I get to it. You know, I don't do meditations. I don't do, you know, chants, mantras. I just friggin' get to work and hustle and do it. Just, you know, what success is about, what? The ability to take action. That's it. I mean, so if it takes you 10 action steps over 3 weeks to get a specific result, I'm going to see if we can do it in 3 weeks. So let's do it in a week. What do we need to change to make that happen? And that's all I'm about. I mean, your results that you're going to get in life is based on the actions that you take. And if you take more of them, you'll get the mistakes quicker so you can turn around and make it faster and better. But that's what you need to be obsessed with.
So to shorten the time to get quicker success, you're saying you have to actually put in more action.
Oh, 100%. But why do we not put in the action? Let me give you an illustration. Yes. So when we flew over today, on Sunday, sorry, then as we're coming over the mountains into Vegas here, I noticed there was a bunch of ice on the wings of the jet, right? So there's a bunch of ice. So here's what happens is if you take off on an airplane, normally, let's say we're leaving Florida and we're going to go to New York where it's snowing. So we use 100% of power and the airplane goes, I'll make up a speed, that goes 400 miles an hour, 100% of power. Now, if you start getting ice on your wing, which is drag, right? Once you start creating drag on your wing, and it could be as thin as a grain of salt, that thin, okay? It can reduce the speed of that airplane by up to 50% or more, and the airplane will fall out of the sky. And even that's when you have 100% of your power. So the point here is you can be 100% working toward your goals, but if you have emotional drag, I don't care how much intention you have, how full throttle you are not going to be consistent in taking action because you have too much drag. So what do? As a pilot, we got a little button. We flip that button up and take us what happens to the ice. Boop, it pops off. It's so cool to watch, right? It literally pops off. So you've got to figure out, okay, do you or are you even aware that one of the reasons you're slowing down, even though you have full power, that you have ice? So you got to figure out what's your ice. Your ice is coming from your childhood, from your abuse, from your trauma. And if you have to understand you're going to get it. You can clean out that emotional hard drive. You can clean out the hard drive in your computer. But is it going to be cleaned out forever once you do it once? No, that just doesn't make sense. Why are we any different? We are no different. So as we work on cleaning ourselves out emotionally, there's going to be things that are going to come back. And so we have to have, like we have processes in the airplane that we do specific things. We have de-ice and we have anti-ice. Anti-ice is what you do to prevent you getting the ice. De-ice is once the ice is on, now it's too late. We got another option to do it with. All right. So you need to have de-ice. You have an anti-ice. I'm going to make this move to prevent this from happening. That's the anti. And then you have the de-ice. Oh crap, it happened. So let's do this to get it off.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is we have to create a process.
Yeah, everybody.
And if we don't have that process or something to go back to,
you are an emotional robot.
We're an emotional robot. And we're operating with the subconscious instead of operating with the conscious mind.
Correct.
You are bringing us into the conscious mind.
Correct.
We have to operate in the conscious
Correct.
mind.
Yeah.
What's a simple 3-step process? I know everybody is different, but for anybody listening to this, Gary, what's a simple 2 to 3-step process we can tell people like, hey, live in your conscious mind. Stop letting that broken record play back here.
So that's a challenging one because a lot of times people like their broken record because it gives them importance. It gives them attention. So if you tell somebody to do this, this, or that, and nothing changes, they really don't want to change. So the first change to change is your why. Now, I think this is used too loosely. People, you'll hear people say, your why should make you cry. You have to have a why. Who doesn't have a why? Everybody, if you're consciously alive, you have a why. So why is it then that some people get more success than others when both parties have the same why? The reason is the level, back to value, the level of importance they place on the why. That's the key. So then I can give you every tool that you need, but if you don't have enough of a why, a reason why you need to make change, you will not implement my strategies, or you'll do it temporarily till you get some blockage and then you'll quit. So when I'm in therapy, if you will, and I don't do too much one-on-one anymore, but when I would work or still work with clients once in a while, the first thing I ask them, tell me the reason why you brought me on. Why did you hire me? Why do you want to do this? Then I tell them, after they tell me, I say to them, I want you to know that what you just said is going to go in one ear and out the other for me. And then I say, because you're going to have to prove it to me. Because anybody, like if I get a room of 1,000 people who are cigarette smokers, and I say, okay, everybody here, show of hands, how many of you here would like to quit smoking cigarettes? Common sense is going to tell us the majority of people are all going to put their hand up. So now you give them, okay, here's some strategies. All right, now go apply them. You're going to get maybe 2% of those people that maybe will get a result. Why would that be? When everybody put their hand up, why are the people who got the results are only 2% and everybody 98% got nothing? The reason is those 2%, even though they had the same why, they had a higher value on their why. And because of their higher value, that gave them the tenacity to when they felt like getting another cigarette or they didn't feel like quitting or whatever, that's what gave them that little extra oomph to implement whatever it was they needed to do to make the change. So you have to identify your value system. And on top of that, that's also going to give you your discipline. Those are related. And without discipline, you're done. So that is why if you have a tremendous amount of discipline and you know what you need to do, but you can't get yourself to do it, that discipline is going to push you through it. You're going to soldier through it.
Yeah, I like that.
So that would be one thing. Yeah. Then the next thing is, because I actually have a 4-step process that I use to reprogram and rewire people. I don't know, maybe that's what you're referring to. So the second one, even though it's not in the order, is then I figure out, okay, what are your limited thought processes that have brought you here? And a lot of people have a hard time wanting to maybe find them or maybe admit to them, but you cannot change what you do not acknowledge.
Right.
So you first got to acknowledge, okay, what are the limited thought processes? And this is why sometimes you do need a therapist, you do need a consultant or a coach, because often you're the picture in the frame. When Mattel toys make little toys and cars, they manufacture toys. When they're doing a focus group, they don't bring adults in. They bring 5-year-old kids, right? Because they forgot what it's like to be a 5-year-old mind. So they bring 5-year-old kids, and the 5-year-old kids say, oh, this is stupid. Boom. Oh, man, I love this one. So they're thinking, okay, I don't know why he loves this one, but they all love this one. So let's go ahead and do something with this one. So that's why it's so important. Like when I have a thought process and I want to question it, I will go to somebody on my team and say, look, here's what I've been thinking. How would you look at it? And I'm just doing that because I'm looking for a bouncing board from them. Now, I need to have UCS, use common sense, to determine, do I like what they're saying? Does that make sense? Et cetera, et cetera. But I always like the feedback from other people. So that's important. So once you get the limited belief and figure out what that limited belief is that's stopping you, because for every limited belief you act on, you get a result. So stop and think about all the results that you're getting those mainly because of limited beliefs and thought process, additional to the value situation as well. Then the next thing is, then we figure out what the opposite of that is. What is the opposite of that limited belief? So now you've got the affirmation, the new story. The next level is to, what is it that I can do to believe that story more? So when you have a limited belief, and I ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of that limited belief do you believe, 10 being the highest, it's going to be a what? It's going to be a 10. If I give you a new belief that's the opposite of the old one, immediately I say on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of that do you believe now? That's the 0. So they get the -1 at a 10, the new one at a 0. So what's so powerful to watch is, as this goes to a 3, this goes to a 7. As this goes to a 6, this goes to a 4. As this gets to 10, this gets to 0. And then you watch somebody literally transform.
I love that. I love that. And I had to write down this whole process, because what I'm hearing you say, you said a lot there, but the importance of your why, and it has to have a high value.
Has to.
Have a high value.
That's why I just ignore when somebody gives me their why.
Because and I get that, because I don't hear what you say, I see what you do.
That's it. That's the why.
I don't hear what you say.
Yeah.
And then the discipline that comes with that.
Yeah. And then there's the fourth thing, and I move it around. But the fourth thing is, what are your new feelings and experiences associated to creating and adopting the new belief? The reason you need to know that is, the reason people are stuck in the limited beliefs is because they have stories consciously and subconsciously that are consciously stacking up, or subconsciously stacked up, and that's all they remember are the old experiences. For example, if I took a video of your life from the day that you were born to this very moment, and I took that video and gave it to like an incredible movie award-winning producer, and I'd say, look, edit me a movie, 3 minutes of Sarah's life, or Sally's life, sorry, 3 minutes of Sally's life, and when I watch that movie, I just want to commit suicide. I want to be so depressed. I will bet you probably have that 3 minutes in your life, and so do I. On the other hand, I can say, look, take this entire movie of Sally's life and give me 3 minutes of a movie. When I see that movie, I'm just going to feel unstoppable. I'm going to feel that I can walk off a 12-story building. And I guarantee you have that in your life. So the problem is when we have these limited things, we're watching that other negative video, all right? And we don't have any. Now, I'll guarantee you that you have, and you have tried something that maybe to get you out of whatever it is that you're working on, and you had a little bit of success, but you forgot that little bit of success because it just got totally torn up by the negative crap. And because that's where we're consciously going or subconsciously going, because we're so used to it. So now I'm going to put you in a conscious mode, and in this conscious mode, what you're going to do now, you're going to be aware of the new feelings that you're buying into, which will slowly begin to suppress the old negative feelings and beliefs. And then, as long as you have a high value in your why, you will continue to stride until you have more emotional, positive emotions and feelings that will by far suppress the negative stuff.
Yeah. So basically,
then the association begins to change.
In a nutshell, you live in your conscious mind and you're aware of it. You're aware of the stories you're telling yourself.
Very aware.
You have to be aware. And the stories we tell ourselves are so powerful because we believe it.
Yeah. And here's why we believe it. There's 3 things that we do subconsciously as humans all day long, and we don't even know it. And if you become aware of what these 3 things are, it can change your life. So to figure out what those 3 things are, you have to hire me or buy my book. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Oh, so here they are. Number 1, you justify. You're constantly justifying.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
you're shifting the blame,
Uh-huh.
or you're minimizing the problem.
Yeah.
Those three things you do all of the time, all day long. You do it for the positive
Right.
and you do it for the negative. You said you worked out this morning?
Yep.
You justified why you should, not why you shouldn't.
Right.
There's
Right.
going to be a day that you're going to want to do it
Oh,
and you're
totally.
not. You're going to
Yes.
justify why you
Why you
shouldn't,
shouldn't. That's
and
right.
then you won't. Okay?
Yeah.
So then you'll also shift the blame. So that's part of making the excuses. Well, I was a little late. The alarm went off. Well, last week,
My head's hurting.
you were right.
Yes.
Last week your head was hurting and you went to the gym. So what I do is when I know I'm doing one of those three things or all of them, I consciously say, okay, Gary, you're shifting the blame, or Gary, you're making an excuse by justifying, or you're minimizing this. Now that I'm conscious of it, I give myself permission to then make the excuse or not.
Wow.
Now I know I am in control. So the moment I feel myself justifying, I'm aware of the thought. I will say, okay, Gary, you're justifying this. All right, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to justify it.
Right.
I would rather somebody do that and not make the excuse. Aware that you're making an excuse, buy into it, and say, you know what? I am shifting the blame. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to shift the blame.
Right. So taking accountability for
Huge. Those
three.
three things, huge, huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge, huge.
And I have seen people who take accountability and have changed their life, and seen people who can't take accountability. They just can't.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
A lot of reasons. Number one, one of the biggest reasons I think, which makes it really difficult for people to accept accountability. To accept accountability means you have to accept responsibility.
Mm.
And none of us, by nature, want to be wrong. So when you're accepting responsibility, you're in a sense saying, I'm wrong.
So it's easier to blame your parents and blame your past and blame your dog and blame
Because
your
you're not
pastor and your
wrong.
church and
You're not
everything else.
wrong.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong.
Because everybody else contributed to what you are
Right,
and who you
right.
are today.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's the high performers that does those three things. They take that accountability.
Yeah, and if you're a high performer, you can perform higher
higher.
because
That's right.
if you are now aware, and you stop and think of it for everybody who's listening, when you're finished listening to this, be consciously aware for the next even hour, 2 or 3 hours, every move you make of things that you do, think about which one of those three things
Right.
that you're doing at this moment, for the good and the bad, for the good and the bad. So if you decided that you're going to go to the gym, you justified why you should
Why.
go to the gym.
Yeah.
It's just like if you drive 55 miles an hour and you know that's the speed limit, you decide to drive 57 and you get pulled over, right? The police officer is going to say, Sally, you were speeding. So what are you going to do? You're going to minimize the problem. I was only going 2 miles above the speed limit.
Or
So
I
you
was
instantly,
following the guy in front of
so
me.
you shift the blame. You shift the blame to him. You're going to do one of three things, right? So I remember once getting pulled over, and I said, okay, I know these three things are going to come up. I'm just going to shut up. I say, officer, I did shift the blame. It was so hard for me not to. I shift the blame. Here's what I said. This is a rental car. I'm not used to driving it. And that was true, but I still shifted the blame.
Oh,
right?
totally.
But I said, I caught myself and said, you're right. You got me. I have no excuses. And he let me go.
Yeah.
No ticket.
Yeah, yeah. And I think people are so forgiving when you actually take accountability. And
Oh,
responsibility.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
So forgiving.
Yeah. And another problem that I see, especially in relationships, is when we are this aware. Like, for example, if I know, I've got some crap coming up, I'll say to somebody on my team, I'll say, I want to share something with you. I want you to know up front, Sally, this is a problem between me and me, not me and you. So all of a sudden, immediately, your defense mechanism has dropped. Because you know right away, I am taking full responsibility for what I'm saying to you. Yeah. So I'm going to say, well, Sally, every time you do this, I had an ex-girlfriend do that, and it really, really hurt me. Again, that's a problem between me and me, not me and you. That doesn't mean you should change. Maybe I need to figure out how not to let that trigger me. And that can just change the dynamics in a relationship overnight.
I love it.
Overnight.
Gary, this was so good, so much value. I was actually taking notes.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
They can find me at 34,000 feet in my jet. No, they can find me at GaryCoxe.com. That's don't forget the E at the end of the name. Gary. That's GaryCoxe.com. Yeah. And I'm on all social media.
What's the name of your book?
I have several books. I have one, Don't Let Others Rent Space in Your Head. I have How to Make Your Thoughts Disappear. I can go on that one. Okay. And You Can't Fillet a Nibble. It's the catch that counts. That's for salespeople.
All right, yeah. Good, very good.
Don't tell me about the possibility of the sale. I want to know the sale is in the boat.
I like it. What's the takeaway for our audience today?
The biggest takeaway is, from what we spoke about today in our subjects is be really aware of
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in your head. And if you can take that subconscious stuff out to make it more conscious, be willing to say, look, this is something that I can now do something with and control, and let go of the past in such a way that we're not blaming everything and everyone,
Yeah.
it will change your life.
Yeah. Gary, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. This was so valuable. Everything you share is gold. Love it. And I would say, step into your conscious mind. You'd be amazed how powerful it is and how powerful you can be. And with that, friends, it's a wrap. Until next